Hi, my name is Kate and welcome to the channel Conscious Parenting. Today my guest is Monica Shiakou, and Monica is Associate Professor of Psychology in European University of Cyprus. She also a practitioner, a child psychotherapist, and holds a lot of publications in the area of play, bullying and attachment. So welcome, Monica.
Hi, thank you very much for having me.
And first question probably is, what is bullying? How would you define
Well, actually, it's a very important question. We are now in a position that we can actually identify bullying and have given an explanation to it. So basically bullying has the characteristic of being consecutive. So it is repeated. In contrast to other types of bullying, that of school violence, bullying has the characteristic that it's actually on a repetitive basis. What also comes as a characteristic of bullying is the imbalance of power between the parties that are being involved. Now, the imbalance of power doesn't necessarily mean physical power. So it doesn't mean that the bully, the child who actually bullies, will be physically bigger and stronger than the child who is being bullied, but it means that there's some kind of difference to the victim that is considered an imbalance by the bully. So it could be, for example, that a little bit overweight, a different race, a different religion, a different sexual orientation, that could be considered an imbalance. And the third characteristic of bullying is that it has an intention to harm. It has not been done as an accident, as a mistake. The persons or the person who is bullying has an intent to harm the victim. So, and again, another way that we can compare it to other types of violence, or even the physical play between boys sometimes, is just, there is no enjoyment in the part. So one of the persons is suffering with this kind of behavior. Whilst when boys are playing, even if they're playing rough and tumbly, they are enjoying it. So in bullying, if the victim is receiving some kind of, let's say, names, or mockery, this has an intent to hurt. It is not enjoyed by the other party. So these are the basic characteristics of bullying, and this is how we can identify them from the general school violence that we sometimes might get in schools.
And you have a lot of practice working with the families, and how would you recommend someone to talk with their kids about the bullying?
Yeah, well, I don't necessarily recommend that you speak to your child about bullying. I definitely recommend that you always have open channels of communication with your child. So if, as a family, you do not communicate and you are not able to, pick the little things that are happening in your child's life, it's very unlikely that that child will come to you when they're in danger, because they're probably being threatened. They're being, let's say, they're being asked, or they're being threatened not to say to anyone. So I think that we don't have to wait actually until our child is in danger to create the channels of communication between ourselves and our child. But having said that, there are definitely some characteristics that a parent can be aware, that they can actually understand that the child is in danger. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they're being bullied, but it could mean that that child is suffering from something. Okay?
What are those?
So those characteristics could be, for example, any kind of behavior that is not typical of your child. So, for example, irregular, extra energy, for example. So if my child is usually, quite cool, quite relaxed, it usually listens, follows rules, doesn't give me a lot of trouble, and all of a sudden that child begins to be disobedient, begins to be hyperactive, begins to be irritable. This is not typical of my child. So it means that my child is under some kind of pressure, okay? But if, for example, if this is your typical child, this will not be something that, you know, will actually inform you of what is happening. However, other kinds of symptoms that actually will alert us that our child is in a stressful situation: irregularities in feeding, over or under, problems with sleep, over or under, complaints about headaches, stomach aches, nightmares, sweating of the palms, any kind of skin disorders that suddenly come up. So these kinds of symptoms are the first symptoms that alert us that our child is probably under pressure, and we need to investigate it. But we actually have to wish that our child will come to us before the organism of the child is put under that kind of strain.
What would be, and that's probably not the particular focus of our conversation, but I feel it's very important in the context of what you said. What would be your, again, recommendations or some specific ideas on how to create this open channel? So actually in the time of stress, it could be used.
Yeah, well, again, it's very important that we begin to speak to our children early about mental health in general, okay? And we need to share little things about our daily lives with our children. So this way we give them the opportunity to learn how to share. So, but a lot of parents say that, you know, I asked my child, what did they do today in school? And they say, I don't know, I don't remember. And I said, yes, of course, that's what they're going to say, because you're not specific. And you're asking a very general question to a very small child. So when your children do come home, you say, tell me one thing you liked about school today, and one thing you didn't like about school today. However, it's very important that I come home and I say to my child, you know what, today I had a very difficult day. You know, I had a bit of an argument with my colleague, but then we did this and this and this. And, you know, maybe I need a minute today, you know, or today I had such a cool day, this and this happened. So kids will not communicate with you if they don't see you doing it. So communication is a skill. It's actually being taught in university. So they have to observe someone doing it. Again, in the case where a mom is not feeling well, she can actually say to the child, today I'm not feeling well and I need, you know, a bit of time and I will feel better, you know, later on. Or even if a parent is medicated for their mental health, we can also share that with our child. So this is how you actually get your child to communicate, when you begin, as soon as the child begins to understand and using language for communication, but even not, to communicate messages. So when the time is right, they will come to you. However, the kid must also feel that the parents have their back. Okay, so that's very important for a child to feel that, you know, even though I did something that my mom might get upset, I know that she will understand and she's got my back. Even though my mom might get angry or my dad might get angry, it's okay because she has my back. So that's actually very important, that our children are not scared of telling us how they feel, because a lot of children are scared of the, you know, consequences that their parents will give. But I mean, as a mom, but also as a therapist, I think that communication is something that is built over time, and you have to give your child the skills. You have to teach your child the skills.
Continue the topic of having these open channels and trusted relationships. From what I hear, is there from the research, from the data, from your practice, is there anything that you know in the environment or in the family history that could make a child prone to be bullied?
Yeah. Well, it's actually a very important question, and I actually have a student that's now investigating if there is any biological predisposition to bullying, or any, you know, the environmental predisposition. Well, now, some individuals are born being biologically more aggressive than others. Now, it doesn't mean that obviously these individuals will become aggressive personalities or problematic personalities, but as we have children that are born easier, smilier, with a temperament that is a little bit more relaxed, and we have children that are born a little bit more eruptive, a little bit more, conflictual and whatnot. But I mean, there's no evidence to say that there's any predisposition for bullying, but we do see that a lot of environmental factors do contribute. And I say contribute because we cannot test causal relationships. We cannot actually identify what causes bullying. We cannot only identify what is related to bullying. So a harsh parental model is related to bullying. Domineering parenting model and very strict parenting model will lead to bullying. A neglectful, rejectful parental model will lead to bullying. In both cases, either being the child might be a bully or a victim. So yeah, the parenting style is related to bullying. This has been also the attachment pattern to the parent is also related to bullying. So we have that also in mind. Then again, we also have the parents' perceptions and understandings of violence and how they see bullying. We see that there is a relationship with that in respect to their child being victims or predators. But what is actually quite important, and I think I've mentioned this to you in our last meeting, online meeting, is that what seems to be very interesting nowadays, and we're looking into it, is the social intelligence of children and the emotional intelligence of children that seems to have a relationship, is leading towards a relationship with bullying and victimization, as are items like self-esteem and whatnot. So social intelligence is the what the IQ is, which is the cognitive. The social intelligence is actually how clever, if you like, you are socially, and how well you're received by your peers, and how well you accept them, and how well you can treat them. So it seems that friendships, strong friendships, and being part of a group is a protective factor against bullying. So this has been supported by evidence. This is actually being advised in the textbooks regarding children and adolescents' mental health. Friendship is a protective mechanism from a number of adversities. And it seems to protect you from future mental health issues. It seems to protect you, from bullying. It seems to protect you. It makes you a better student. So we are now advising that help children make friends, help children keep friends, and this by itself will be protective not only against bullying, but against a lot of other, adversities. And the adversities nowadays are so many.
So you're saying not only the child-parent relationships could be a protective factor, like let's say call it healthy attachment, for example, but also the wider group of people and friends.
Of course, you know what? What also seems to be related to bullying is the policies that are set in schools. According to the policies, this will actually regulate how the bullying will go. Now, if a child has no friends and is an alone friend, is an alone boy or girl, that is actually a sensitive issue to bullying. Now, we categorize children regarding their social status, in school. So it's important for a teacher to to create a social graph of her class. There's actually questionnaires to do that. We don't do it just randomly. So you create a social graph. So this is a very good way to help bullying in schools. And you actually see in which social group your kids will fall into. So we have the popular kids, we have the rejected kids, and we have the ambivalent kids. The ambivalent kids are those that are, liked by some, hated by others. The popular kids are, everyone likes them. And then we have the rejected kids. No one likes them, no one wants them, no one invites them, and they're always alone. Okay? So it's very important that the teacher creates a social graph, categorizes the children with various activities into the groups, so she can actually help change that with various exercises, So we won't have children that are easy targets. You know what? This is actually, part of the human, development. One individual alone in the forest was actually more improbable that they would be attacked by an animal, whilst if they were in their group, they were more protected.
Yeah, that's true. So, are there any long-term consequences of bullying?
For sure.
Yeah, like when somebody experienced that.
For sure. There, time and time again, and also my students have researched this, but there is ample evidence to support that the quality of life, it's been actually been measured by the World Health Organization Quality of Life Questionnaire, showing that the experiences of bullying whilst in school have long-term effects on the life of an early adult. The quality of life of those that perceived that they were victimized is lower than those that were not victimized. And also the quality of life of the bully is also lower. So because, look, as far as I'm concerned, as a therapist, both bullies and victims are victims to me. Okay? So the child that is bullied is also a victim in this case. Okay? However, in bullying, we tend to forget the most important group, which is actually the observers. Okay? Those are, that's a much bigger group, and there's power in numbers. So the observers that are observing an incident of bullying will take various stances. Some of them will be supporting the bully. Others will be quiet because they don't want to be put in that position, so they forget. But evidence shows that if the observers are actually trained and empowered to stop the bullying incident, it will stop in 30 seconds. Like that. Okay? But we forget about this group, that the observers seem to be affected and the same strength of effect as the victims. So they might not be receiving the violence themselves, but by watching it creates issues in their mental health. And it's the same, in families where there is violence. If the child witnesses the father, being violent against the mother, but never receives violence himself, will suffer as if he was or she was the victim of the violence, they're on the receiving end. So one way of intervening is to empower the observers, because they can stop it. They have the power to stop it, because we have the power of numbers.
So basically, it's like from the very early age, I just imagine the situation. I'm observant, quite small, and can see this power struggle that you have to step up or step out and say something. That's again the communication and the skills and something that.
But they need to help you do that. They need to train you to do that, because most kids are actually afraid of the consequences within the group. So they, nothing is being done. Some schools are trying. Some private schools are also trying, but if we choose to look at bullying as, as something different to the children's training, if we're choosing to not consider social skills as equally or even not more important than their cognitive development, they'll never get there. You know, we cannot expect that bullying will actually stop if we do one activity per year. It will never happen. Never. You know, for something like this to have an impact and a long-term sustainability, it needs to be part of the everyday curriculum inside mathematics, inside English, inside everything. It needs to be part of the everyday curriculum, not bullying necessarily, but life skills. You know, so teaching these kids basic life skills that bullying will become less of a problem. You never have to talk to them about bullying. As long as you train them from very young to have life skills and social skills, bullying in itself will start going down because children know other ways, better ways. Of course, you will always have children that are coming from so problematic families that even the best schools can actually, but those will be, you know, the small group. Now we have the majority.
Yeah, you were saying that for you as a practitioner, both the victim and the bully are victims of the situation and the environment. If by any chance that happens, that a family, you know, the parents, they have a child who is bullying other kids, so what would be your approach to that?
Well, if I'm lucky and they actually accept it.
Yeah.
Because usually when, unfortunately, their parents are finding it very hard to accept that their child is the bully, okay? So at least in 90% of the times, the parents are accepting absolutely no blame, okay? They are acting against the school and against the therapist that's being put in charge, and they're threatening and suing and whatnot that their child is not the bully and has done nothing wrong. When you actually see this behavior, you actually understand, okay, there you go, this is where this child is coming from, okay? So poor little boy, poor little girl, if, you know, I understand as a mom that when my child is being threatened, I will step up and become a lion. I get that, okay? But after a certain time, I will have to reassess and see what's going on. But in very few circumstances do the parents of kids who are bullying will actually accept the blame. And it's not you know, a coincidence that we have kids coming from these kind of families and they're bullied. But nevertheless, when the family is willing to work with you, that kid needs to be in therapy. You know, so there is not a magic wand that we can. That kid needs to be in therapy, and we need to work their internal world and their feelings and what's happening and whatnot, and then we need to give that child new social skills that are more acceptable in society and in the schooling system. So basically, this is what therapy and play therapy, which is one of the methods that I use to work with children. We need to give them new, more acceptable ways of behaving. But first, we need to understand why. What is happening?
As a part of this would be caused, I guess, and rooted in the family dynamic, let's say. So what me as a parent, for example, if I find myself in the situation when, okay, something is wrong and my child looks like he or she behaves in a way that is not really acceptable, what would be my first steps as a parent towards myself?
Well, first of all, I think that, we're all off sometimes as parents, you know, and parenthood is one of the most difficult things that a human being is called to do, okay? So we can't get it right, you know, we probably missed something along the way and whatnot. As a parent, what I always say to parents, there's people and places you can go to get help, you know. We are not alone anymore, and there's other people dealing with the same issues, and you can go and get help. You know what? if your child, for example, was having a sore throat and a bad cough, would you just sit there and start, thinking, how am I going to solve this? Or would you go to the doctor and tell you what's going on? So, and we're not saying that you should go to a therapist with just like that, but I'm saying that if the school has called you numerous times and has said that time and time again, your child is getting in trouble, your child is not listening, your child is not cooperating, your child is, harming other children, and you've tried with the ways that you see fit and they're not working, then you should go and see someone. And there's lots of reasons why your child will be behaving like this. Probably as a parent you have a role in this as well, okay? But I tell you what, look, most parents, when they hear that another child has hit their child, the first inclination is hit him back, to not allow anyone to be hit. Okay? So that's the first inclination, because that's the way they think that. But this is wrong. This is not, because we shouldn't actually encourage the circle of violence or an eye for an eye. Now, there's things that you can do when someone hits you without hitting back. And then a Cypriot parent, for example, will say, well, and my son will be the one that's been hit, and no, I'd rather he hits. And then we get this toxic masculinity that is being, and then you try to say this to them, but they're very defensive. They say, no, if he gets hit, he hits. But then a child, of 5 and 4 or 6, can't actually distinguish when they should and when they shouldn't, because if you accept violence and if a parent encourages violence for whatever reason, then the child will actually get this and use it across the board. Now, where a child can actually hit back is when a child is being in a corner, is being hit, is being pushed, and then yes, you can defend yourself. But if someone comes now and kicks me, I'm not going to go running back and kick. I'm going to go talk to the teacher, I'm going to go report it, I'm actually going to use words, and there's a lot of steps. So you show this child that there's other ways of resolving violence, but this is the, and when I actually say this to parents, they say, but you're leaving your kid unprotected. And I say, no, I am not leaving my kid or the kids that I'm paying to help. I'm not leaving them unprotected. I am actually giving them skills that they can resolve their issues and their conflicts outside of the jungle, in a civilized, because a very small child, but even an older child, cannot actually identify when is it really, really, really necessary for me to be violent, and it's very rarely is it necessary. Only when you need to defend yourself.
Now, and I think you have a study on this, like how the way the kids spend their after school time has changed. That was your PhD, and so we definitely everyone knows that it changed a lot, and the rise of technology, etc. So does this affect bullying as a topic?
Well, exposure to violence and violent games does actually increase violence. It's not just in kids, it's also in adults. So there was a study that was done, and men who were exposed to violent pornographic material, where there was violence involved as part of various fetishes, and this was done quite often, and they were exposed to this quite often. When they actually were in the real world with a real partner, they were actually violent with a partner. Not because they felt that this was now a norm for them, So it's kind of like it's incongruent with reality. So yeah, there is evidence showing that violence, I mean, this is the classic Bobo doll experiment, you know, where you are aware of it. So obviously, yes. But also, it's not just that this will contribute to violence, but we have seen a rise in cyberbullying. So, 20 years ago, at least the child who was bullied would, the torture would end by the end of the day.
Yeah.
Now it just comes home with them. Okay, so it's 24/7. So we see a great rise in cyberbullying and ways of mockery and the way that they find ways to torture each other is seriously, it's like they are coming up with different ways to torture each other via via social media.
I'm just wondering, because with the, let's say, classical bullying and violence in school, this is something that you usually could observe before technology. Now everything is going on here, and it's sometimes, yes, you have evidence, but for the person who is bullied, everything could be normal all around him or her, but actually the terrible things are happening here. So how we could again address, and what we as parents and community of people who, adults, let's say.
Well, a lot of schools are actually now addressing this, and they are, at least I know private schools, they are sending parents emails, please beware of what your child is doing online. Please, this has come to our, and this, but now, because there is some sort of anonymity, when it's online, this is why things tend to get a little bit out of hand. And whilst we had, let's say, if I didn't like you, I would invite you to my birthday. Now, if I don't like you, you're not part of my Viber group, or I can throw you out of my Viber group, or whatever. So again, we need to help children speak up and talk about this and teach them what is right and what is wrong, because again, through the social media, there's things that they don't understand. So they could be asked to send a picture, they could be asked to do this, and they could just do it. Now we have to also be aware as parents that there is a part of the police section that is dedicated to cybercrime, and they actually do investigate situations that involve minors, and especially when there has been a leakage of some kind of personal information of the child from another child. It will be investigated. So it's important that parents are aware of this department and what it does, so they can actually, if there is an issue, they can actually, and it's important to let our children know that whatever goes up doesn't go down in the internet world. So I might actually get something down, but it's still up there. But then again, it starts from the parent themselves. If the parents actually publish their kids from very, very young on their social media and everywhere, then the child will not be so aware. Now schools are asking you if they're allowed to publish, as a mother, I always say no. For example, as a mother, I always say you're allowed to publish in the school yearbook, but you cannot publish in the social media. And that's just me, because I want to show him that, even though he says I want to, I say, you cannot make that decision right now. And you're not sure that if you're going to want at the age of 15 to appear, with your little nappy on the beach. And again, the way we present ourselves on the social media. So if I'm a mom and I put a picture of my of me with my swimming suit, it's not that it's actually a problem, but would I want my 12-year-old to do that as well? So it's what you show them. I'm not condoning the fact that a parent might be doing it, but if you have a child, you need to think when they actually put their own selves at 12 with a bikini, would that be okay? What about if someone steals that picture and it's found on a pornographic site? So again, but we have so much material and so many trainings teaching children how to be safe on the internet. It's just a matter of giving them that information.
I'm just thinking that really it's more difficult for kids nowadays. There's like a new level of challenge for the bullying with the online and social media right now. And I would imagine that for somebody who is, let's say, 10, 12, 15, being attacked in the courtyard of the school would be the same for the intensity as being thrown out from the WhatsApp or whatever.
Because that is their world now, and that is what's important now. I mean, being thrown out of a WhatsApp group is the equivalent of not being invited to a party. Even not more important at the moment. So yeah.
I think you also had a publication about the difference, and correct me if I'm wrong, how to help kids identify the situation, the scenarios of bullying.
I have a few publications on that. That's actually very, very important.
Could you give a little bit of context?
We will be surprised that it has been supported through evidence that teachers, children, and researchers are not talking about the same thing. So this is what I know what bullying is as a researcher. When I ask kids what they think bullying is, they cannot identify it in the same way. When I ask children with the teachers, they cannot identify it. So we are talking a different language. Okay, so if I'm asking a kid to describe, their experiences with bullying, they will not be describing what I want them. They will not be describing the way I understand bullying. So there is a bit of a misunderstanding that if we're actually talking in the same language. So it's very important that any kind of intervention that takes place, before it takes place, you need to train children of what this is, okay? You need to let them know, and this is why in all the questionnaires that we're using about bullying, we give explanations of what this is. So children are answering the correct things, we are measuring the correct thing, and we're intervening on the correct thing. Okay? But you will be surprised that teachers actually know less than children. So yes, in one of the studies that was actually done with one of my career counselor students, her first degree was in theater. So she actually created a dramatized scenario where she taught children what bullying was, and then we tested their knowledge regarding bullying before. We exposed them to the scenario, to the drama, and then we tested again, and we saw that this drama, this scenario, was actually a good way to educate young children to identify what bullying is. Because you'll be surprised that a lot of them can actually identify. They will say, she was just teasing, this and that. Even though we live in a world of politically correctness, and teenagers are more politically correct, they will respect the fact that you have a different gender identification, and it's cool to respect it, and it's very uncool not to. We still have a lot of mockery about individuals who identify as something different than what we expect them to be. Although we are seeing the political correct and the cancel culture, so it could very well be that if someone has a different opinion to you about what you identify with, you could be cancelled. But we have to understand that groups that have been traditionally rejected, abused, isolated, are now coming very aggressively, demanding their rights. And these are the queer community, these are women, and these are blacks. So these groups have been in the past, very, very, very abused. So they are now coming very strong, and they're actually very in your face about my rights and whatnot. politically correct is yet not a solution to bullying. So yeah.
Interesting. So, is there anything else you know, I didn't ask, but you wish to share on the topic? Anything that's...
Make friends, help children make friends, and you will thank me for life. This is what I'm saying. I mean, it's not that complicated, you know. Give them social skills and emotional skills, and they will be happy people, happy individuals, you know. And this will protect them from things that we cannot imagine. And without really trying, this is going to be like a protective cloak around them that will guide them and that will help them navigate. And social skills, you know, how to communicate, to be kind, to be polite, to put yourself in other people's shoes, you know, develop empathy, you know. A lot of kids nowadays don't care how the other person feels. You really need to train the kids to show empathy. Empathy is related to bullying. Lower empathy, higher bullying. Okay, so friendship is, and emotional intelligence, social intelligence, which is related to friends, is actually something that I'm very rooting for nowadays.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.